Welcome to our post-game live edition of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined by my co-host Matt Fortuna after Notre Dame's 42-13 win over Florida State. No, actually, I'm sorry, that was Alabama over LSU. Notre Dame was 52-3 over Florida State. The game that there weren't a lot of big talking points, as is the case when you beat somebody by 49 points. But I think it's worth noting Florida State's, for how bad Florida State is, and they are really bad. Their largest margin of defeat was only 26 points this year, and that was to SMU. Notre Dame just smoked them from start to finish, and it was the biggest probably takeaway for Notre Dame that's impactful the rest of the season is Howard Cross's left ankle and how much tape was on it afterwards. But this was sort of a set them up, knock them down night for Notre Dame. They had no problem with Florida State, and they moved to 8-1 on the season. I'm not sure where they'll be ranked in the college football playoff poll next week with everything that's happening around them, but a good win. Miami loss is a good loss for Notre Dame. On top of that, we'll see what happens with Utah BYU that's going on right now, but overall a pretty solid Saturday for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think that Miami loss helps too, because I think it all but eliminates any chance of the ACC getting two teams in. Correct. And they got to get one in anyway. So it's not like that's going to affect Notre Dame all that much. It's funny you mentioned the hyper lack thereof leading up to this game. I saw on social media late in the week that Bob Costas intro going around. You may even, I know you wrote about it a few years ago, but yeah, you may have even tweeted it. And I just remember it's on my timeline. I'm like, why are we, I know Bob said he's retiring, but like, why are we going down memory lane now? Like, that's how far removed this Florida State team is from that Florida State team. Oh yeah, that is the same program. I mean, and shoot, that's how far they were removed from last year's team, which was really freaking good. I mean, I knew a lot of people who were at this game today because they booked their trip to South Bend about a year ago when this was on the schedule, and they saw this was going to be a night game. This was going to be the quote unquote marquee home game. And I think the signs of Notre Dame doing what they're supposed to do against an opponent like this is when you're looking up the box score to see who the names actually are of the people who are making plays in the fourth quarter. Because we had a couple of those in the fourth quarter on offense. Then we had Luke Tallich's pick six late in the game as well. Got everyone excited and hyped. I tweeted, you got to feel good for the walk-on. A lot of people are correcting me. My friends, once a member of WAPU Nation, always a member of WAPU Nation. You keep that walk-on mentality with you from the get-go. I know you wrote a big story on him about a year ago on The Athletic as well. But it was a all-around successful night. And look, no one got seriously hurt. You know, we held our breath a little bit with the Howard Cross ankle, but if they're talking about putting him back in there, that's a good sign. He's not hurt. And you know what? If you want to hold him out against Virginia and save him for Army, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, heck, if you want to hold him out against Army and save him for USC, that'd be fine too. I think that ideally, he could give you something against Army. It'd be a good spot. I thought the walk-on you're talking about, Jake Tefelsky, with his first, he had a carry and a reception tonight against Florida State.
No, Justin Fisher had a carry and a catch.
Tefelsky did too.
Did he? Oh, you're right. Yeah, Fisher and yep.
Yeah, big night for walk-ons, and obviously as the Luke Tallich pick six, a former walk-on, brief walk-on at Notre Dame, but yeah, it was. I mean, Notre Dame could have named their score in this one, which is interesting because I think in a lot of ways the offense didn't really get out of third gear, and they were due to hit a plateau at some point after, I think what we would agree, probably 6 straight games of improvement, or 4.5 straight games of improvement, maybe since the end of the Louisville game to tonight. Tonight felt like maybe a little bit more of a plateau, but if you're plateauing on a night where you put 52 points on the scoreboard, you averaged 6.3 yards per carry, 7.3 yards per play, and 453 total yards, it's a fine plateau. Good place for Notre Dame's offense to be. It took them, they had those 2 3-and-outs back to back in the first half, and people are like, again, it's a reminder, don't tweet out your frustrations midway through the first quarter about play calling or how the game's going.
Or text them to me.
Yeah, or text them to either of us, because you knew this game was going to end exactly like it ended. Florida State had no shot. At one point, their quarterback, Brock Glenn, had a quarterback rating of 1.8, which I didn't even know was possible. But he did. He finished with a comfortable 29.4, going 5 of 18 for 51 yards and 2 picks. So this, I think it was a fine. The defense did not play in third gear; they played in fifth gear. But if you can have that defense with this version of the offense, obviously you're going to opponent adjust a little bit down the road. It's a good place for Notre Dame to be.
8 sacks, a couple of like punt tips, and then obviously the pick six at the end, because I felt like if there was one thing truly missing to like punctuate this like all 3 phases domination, it was like a defensive or special teams touchdown, and they got that at the end. Fisher's catch, by the way, to keep that drive alive, Steve Angeli's first drive in the fourth quarter, 3rd and 8, I want to say it was. Steve Angeli looked dead to rights, and he just kind of slings it sidearm right, like almost parallel to him, to Fisher, who makes something out of nothing, gets 16 yards, keeps that drive alive, and then he throws in Angeli throws a very nice pass to Deion Colsey. And that was encouraging too, just in a game like this, to see the ball distribution. I think 10 different players caught passes. Both Evans and Colsey had their first touchdown catches of the season. And Evans looked like Mitchell Evans again.
Yes,
the Mackey Awards semifinalist list came out, and he was on it. Good for him. I'm not sure before this game I'd say he's one of the 8 best tight ends in the country, or has played like it to this point. But tonight he certainly looked like the Mitchell Evans who was on track to be one of, if not the best tight ends in the country around this time last season.
And it's interesting. I talked to Greg McElroy during the week for a story on Riley Leonard. We talked about a handful of stuff, and I sort of asked, like, where do you think Notre Dame's offense is? Can Riley Leonard beat you with his arm? And he's like, if you play a lot of zone defense, I don't feel good about it because you got eyes in the backfield. It makes the quarterback run a little bit harder. And then he's like, but if you can get Mitchell Evans back to the Mitchell Evans that I saw last year, then I think Notre Dame's offense becomes a real pain in the butt to defend. By a good defense, not by Florida State. And if Mitchell Evans can just give you what he gave you tonight, he'll make that catch that ended up hitting the turf. It was a fine overturn, but that's a catch that he can make. We've seen him make it. And, we're finally, I think this was the first game he played that's more than a year removed from his torn ACL, because it happened at the very, very end of October last year. This was the hope for Notre Dame that the Mitchell Evans of last year would show up at some point. Like he would be recovered enough to be that guy. And yeah, I think that the flashes of that tonight, that's something that's significant that might help you in November, could really help you in December and maybe January too. That was a development in a game that, maybe didn't have a ton of them. I thought Jadarian Price hitting the ball with authority up the middle in the run game was significant. He didn't try to dance outside. He was about to tweet out that, I thought his 17-yard run was kind of one of the most decisive that he's had of the season. And then before I could even post it, he's got the 65-yard touchdown run, which was very similar. That's the kind of stuff that to me is like, this is a player that's improving during the season. It's just Jaden Greathouse being involved in the offense. Could have had another acrobatic catch down by the goal line, but that's a player maybe getting better during the season. They don't need to have a go-to receiver per se, but if Jaden Greathouse can be a guy that can be counted on, similar to Bo Collins, Jordan Faison had a bad drop, but I think is getting back. And then Jaden Harrison, who we sort of forget about, right? He had 2 catches for 47 yards tonight too. So it's receiver by committee is fine. That's the way that roster has been built. But I thought Notre Dame did a nice job of taking advantage of it tonight. They were so good offensively that Jeremiyah Love's 9 carries for 19 yards is like just sort of like a whatever. It's fine. Like, that could be next week. That could be 9 carries for 120 yards.
Yeah, it's the one piece of the box score you look at and you think, how they doing this game? But even then, touchdown in every single game this season. That's 9 for him, or more than 9, but 9 straight games with a touchdown for him. Very, very impressive. And yeah, I thought Greathouse really stood out tonight. I mean, it's a guy who had 18 catches, I think, on the season coming in, had 5 tonight, particularly that first drive in the third quarter, the first play. I think it was the first play. They ran a little misdirection to the right, came back to him on the left in the screen. He went for 10 yards, had a 20-yard catch on that same drive. Good. I mean, second half Notre Dame offense was clicking. Again, it takes a little bit sometimes to get going. I mean, if you look at Leonard's halftime stats, I mean, he was 8 of 18 for 116 yards, but Notre Dame had also rushed for 157 yards. So it didn't matter all that much. They scored on their final 5 drives, 4 touchdowns, a field goal, plus they had the pick 6 on top of that. They scored on every drive in the second half. Florida State's bad. I mean, there's no getting around that. There's no sugarcoating that. I think the frustrations of the season probably weighed on Florida State at the end, although it felt like only one Florida State player got flagged for after the whistle penalties, and Notre Dame had 3 or 4. Marcus Freeman was really lighting into Sam Pendleton after the extra point that led to a couple of those penalties. But there are a couple teams you could say this about, but Florida State in particular, they at least have the same coaching staff that they had last year when they went 13-0, and to see them from then to now, it's just, and I hate to bring up the stat, but I didn't know it. NBC said tonight, Florida State now is 1-9, I believe. Yep. The last team, so coming into this game, they were the first team that was a preseason AP top 10 team to have 8 losses since Notre Dame in 2016. Which
now, and they've pushed beyond that. They've set new territory.
Pushed beyond that. They have
for just terrible play when people think you're going to be good.
Both coaches got huge contract extensions right before that. Brian Kelly that year, and
did we not talk about this on last week's show? Like, if you do the contract extension before the season over, it's a panic move.
Don't do it for the playoff.
Texas and Florida today, like Billy Napier gets the vote of confidence. You're coming back, and then you lose like 100-2. Like it's
some other things are going on in Florida's athletics department that I think are going to cost everyone their job. If you read the student newspaper down there, but it's that was I didn't really understand that one. It felt like another CYA move by an athletic director. But you look around the country today, you're looking at results that work in Notre Dame's favor because that's what we do. Miami is a nice one. I think Georgia getting run off the field by Ole Miss and just looking beyond dysfunctional offensively.
I can't figure that one out in terms of a Notre Dame context.
I think it's good. I think that's one team.
So does Georgia drop below Notre Dame next week?
They should.
Does Ole Miss jump Notre Dame?
They might.
That's why I can't figure that one out.
Well, I think Georgia should fall. I mean,
they were bad.
It's relevant in the sense of they were the SEC champion in this week's poll, so they're a top 4 seed. Now they are not because they've got 2 losses. And if you look under the hood, I mean, they've had a number of close calls this season in addition to their 2 losses. I mean, if you watch the game today, they scored a touchdown on a 21-yard field after an game-opening pick, and that was the only time they reached the end zone. Carson Beck is horrible, and that was a guy who was on top of rightfully so, I thought, after last year, but on top of every Heisman watch list, every mock draft. He's terrible. He's absolutely awful. That offense looks broken right now. I think Ole Miss has a fairly favorable schedule from here on out. Georgia goes to Tennessee next week. That's why I bring that up too. I mean, if Tennessee beats them, they're out.
I think it's the other way around. I think Tennessee comes.
Or Tennessee goes to. Sorry, you're right. Tennessee goes to Georgia, but I mean, if Tennessee wins that game, and who's to say they can't? Georgia's out. That's why. Maybe we've got that like SEC brainwashing in us in the sport. Of all the teams I thought Notre Dame would eventually jump, Georgia was not on my radar. And then they come out and lose the way they did today, and it's like, whoa, okay, maybe they will. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz was taking a bunch of crap because he said in his sideline post-game interview, like, we're still alive for the playoff, and he's right. I mean, 2 losses, they went out, and they're going to be favored in their last 3 games. 10-2 Mizzou is at least in that conversation. Now you can debate whether they belong there or not, but I think that's the beauty of the playoff, right? And otherwise, meaning
short debate.
Otherwise, 10-2 Mizzou in the SEC.
No, they're bad.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I don't think they're that great, but they're in that conversation. But an otherwise meaningless Mizzou-Oklahoma game on November 9th has meaningful playoff implications. So,
I mean, hey, they have a quality win over Vanderbilt, so they got that going for them.
Vandy did not exactly.
No.
Vandy for the second, I would say this is only the second time I could say they like laid an egg. Georgia State, there's no excuse losing that game. Texas, I'll forgive you. This one, they got blown out at home. And Shane Beamer had an awesome post-game press conference. You see that?
No, I didn't.
He was mad that Vanderbilt was the only SEC, much like Notre Dame, the only SEC school that does not allow live mascots, so they couldn't bring the Gamecock. And he said, meanwhile, LSU has a live freaking tiger in their stadium, and we can't bring this bird here.
How'd that work out? How'd that work out, BK? Not great.
Did you see BK on game day?
I did not.
They had him on the touchscreen with Saban, and it was good. And McAfee a couple of times did the AO, the start to neck, and had the crowd chant what they chant, which is why they don't play the games anymore. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Brian, I can't figure out what they're trying to say. Can you help me here? And Reese stepped in and was like, Brian Kelly has a background in politics. He knows which issues to avoid.
Yeah, very wise. Very wise. Yeah, I don't know if you've kind of scrolled the questions yet, if any jump out, but like, yeah, overall, I think with Miami going down to ACC, probably a one big league. Big 12 is probably they were already going to be a one big league, but if BYU loses, that makes it automatic. That gives you so much wiggle room with the SEC and the Big 10 potentially both getting 4 in, which it feels, frankly, kind of likely at this point. That still leaves room for Notre Dame to certainly make it. And on top of that, you know, the hosting possibilities. I'm not sure this was like a great week for Notre Dame in terms of hosting a playoff game, but it wasn't terrible either. I think that, you know, the Tennessee Georgia next week, that will eliminate somebody that Notre Dame will move ahead of. If Indiana had lost to Michigan, that would have been great for Notre Dame and the hosting possibilities. So overall, I mean, the most important thing is like Notre Dame just is good now. Like they're not like mucking their way through their schedule the way that we see some other teams do it. And I realize it has not been a great schedule. And the last serious team that they played here was Louisville, and they won by 7 points in a pretty tight game. But Notre Dame to me looks like a team that they know who they are, they know who they're not, and they're able to sort of like lean into those strengths now in a way that they didn't at all in September, and we saw them sort of figure it out in real time in October.
So 4 SEC teams, I'm looking now, there are quite a few that have 2 or fewer losses. So I'm trying to figure out who those 4 would be since you've written off Mizzou. But I mean, I think Georgia's out if they lose next week. I think A&M's out if they lose to Texas, which I think they will. So now we're talking Texas, Alabama if they win out, Tennessee probably.
I think it's Tennessee or Georgia. It's Alabama. It's Texas.
Ole Miss.
And maybe it's Ole Miss. I'm not really sure. But I think four from that league will make it.
Mizzou's got at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, against Arkansas. They could lose any. I think they will lose South Carolina. I don't think their schedule is that great, though.
No, it's terrible. Like, I'm offended that you're talking about Missouri.
It's not that bad, is it?
No, it's real bad.
You realize we covered Notre Dame, right?
Yeah. No, it's even worse than that.
You might be right.
They also lost to the team.
Yeah, you're right. Mizzou
41-10.
Before today, Notre Dame was 64. Mizzou was 73. I don't think either really improved much with their opponents today.
Their best win is Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
And every time they've played a legitimate team, they have gotten their butts handed to them. So they're at the back of the 2-loss SEC pack. Like Eli Drinkowitz just need to calm down about that.
They are, but you know who controls this thing, right?
Eli Drinkowitz.
His conference's network.
Yeah.
And they will get 4 teams in. Also, shout out Drew Pine, big comeback today. And really, at least I think he started today's game, but he threw 3 touchdown passes, and it's a fun game and an old Big 12 rivalry game with Mizzou beating Oklahoma right after Notre Dame beat Florida State. Also, 8 sacks tonight. That was it didn't feel significant in real time because it just like felt like they were doing what they should be doing because Florida State's that bad. But 3 from Riley Mills. Again, Howard Cross not playing in the second half. It was a very, very, very impressive performance all around, but especially defensively. And the yards per play for Florida State was at 2.8 per rush. There were 2 different quarterbacks, one 5 of 18 for 51 yards, the other 5 of 8 for 37 yards. We said before, I think Notre Dame could cover the over-under on their own at 43.5, and they did that easily. It was a good out-of-the-bye week performance that continues to point this team in the right direction. And I don't see how they lose another game. I mean, again, they've done worse before, but they're going to have a hard time to screw this one up.
Yeah, and that's how I would phrase it. If they lose, they screwed it up. There's nobody on the schedule that should be able to beat them. They would have to really not take Virginia seriously. Defensively, Army, I get it, but they've already played, I think, a better option team in Navy. And I realize Navy completely melted down. But, they handled that. They're smart football players, and they're old up the middle. And then USC is going to want to go into the offseason by the time Notre Dame shows up there. So they should win out, and I think they should, it's college football. You can always have one game where you're like, what the heck's happening? Why is Notre Dame down 14.5 to USC? That could happen, but I just don't see how the way Notre Dame seems to have found its groove in terms of preparation and not doing what they did against Northern Illinois or Marshall or Stanford in 2022. That kind of performance seems to be fading from view with Marcus Freeman. And that was, we've mentioned Brian Kelly on the show a couple times already, but that was Brian Kelly's one of his really good strengths at Notre Dame is he seemed to be able to defy human nature where they would beat every team that they should beat. Marcus Freeman has not done nearly as good a job of that as Brian Kelly did, but it does feel like this team is rounding into a form where they're going to beat all the teams that they should beat. I'm more confident now than I've ever been this season that they will win out.
Yeah, I think coming into the year, though, we said the same thing about the schedule beyond the first game. So I don't think anything's changed in that regard. But I think they have gotten better over the course of the season, which is what you want to see. I wasn't always sure last year before, say, the Clemson game, if they really got better, right? They were dominating bad Pittsburgh teams. I think Wake was after that. I do think Army is better than Navy. I know we're splitting hairs here. I don't think the odds of anyone shooting themselves in the foot the way Navy did twice against Notre Dame in that situation, with 6 turnovers,
7 times,
or 7, whatever it was. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, we're talking about, if there's a look ahead line for that game right now, it's probably Notre Dame close to 20.
I would think so, yeah.
So we'll see. Then again, Yankee Stadium isn't exactly conducive to blowouts with that playing surface.
Fair point.
Let's get some questions. Terry Corcoran, strangest part of the. Oh, you know what's funny? I hit this question before I read it, and I was just going to bring this part up. Terry Corcoran, strangest part of the game, end of first half. Raymond brings on Chubby, walk-on kicker, try long field goal instead of Jeter. Timeout. They then go for it and score. Yay! Jeter kicks rest of the game. When I saw him going out for the 52-yarder, I thought that was not wise. Correct. And I thought it was wise that they came back out and went for it. And then, of course, they ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. So if there's a coaching maneuver or move that you can point to in a game that's this big of a blowout, I would point to that one. But I was a little surprised, especially Florida State, I think, leads the nation in block kicks this year. They do one thing right. It's that. Yeah. Notre Dame from deep has had kicks blocked before, as we've seen this year in that stadium. So I didn't really follow the logic and trot him out there. And I know it wasn't Jeter, but Freeman was asked maybe a month or so ago what the distance is on, or how long he could trust Jeter, and he did not have an answer. He flat out said, "I don't know. We'll see." That just did not feel. It felt like, hey, it wasn't him, but it just felt like, hey, we just missed one from 44. Let's see if we can get one back. They didn't have to try it. Thankfully, they didn't. And everyone lived to tell about it. But I meant to bring that part up before we got to questions.
Yeah, that felt like, we've seen Marcus Freeman take some bizarre timeouts at the ends of halves. That one is probably worse than anything Freeman had done, because it put Notre Dame in position to score a touchdown that like removed any doubt of the game. Yeah, that was strange to me. I didn't get that either. But look, it's not the weirdest thing that's going on with Florida State football right now. So, I guess we can probably keep that in context.
A reminder to continue to bring your questions to the show, to subscribe on our YouTube channel and on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Leave a 5-star review and rating. Appreciate all the interaction with you guys throughout the course of the season. And we're just getting started with, as Marcus Freeman said, possibly more games at Notre Dame Stadium beyond next week's Senior Day against Virginia. And if you would like some great merchandise, go to obviousshirts.com. Look for the independent collection. We've got T-shirts, crew necks, quarter zips, lots of cool gear. Been very happy with the sales. I've had a lot of people reach out, wondering even if we'll get those in the Notre Dame bookstore, which would be quite a feat for little us, Pete.
I think we'll have to mark those up about 200% on that. But also a reminder, you can go to roback.com, use the promo code Irish for 20% off your first order. Notre Dame sweatshirt, quarter zip, polos. It's half of my wardrobe. It's the vest I'm wearing right now. So roback.com, promo code Irish for 20% off your first order.
David Jansen, hey guys, any feel for Howard Cross's injury? Go Irish. I think we pretty much covered it, unless there's.
Yeah. No, I mean, Freeman was asked about it, and I, was like, I didn't know if he could go back in, with the implication being like maybe he could have gone back in. The amount of tape on his left ankle was not predictive of a player who wanted to play, but I watched him leave the field after the alma mater, and he kind of gingerly jogged up the tunnel without too much pain. It wasn't like he was clearly hobbled. So considering what it looked like on the replay, I was like, ooh, that it looked a little gnarly on the ankle. And maybe it is, but I wouldn't expect that to be something that is going to keep Howard Cross out too long.
Paul Kinlan, Al Golder will be at LSU next year. They will pay him $20 million and half the bayou. Here's an exercise
the
for you.
Coach, the defensive coordinator.
Good question. Here's my question for you. Rank the 3 most awkward fits in order. Al Golden at Miami, Brian Kelly at LSU, Al Golden at LSU.
I think Al Golden at Miami would still be number 1.
I think so too.
I think Al Golden at LSU would be number 2, and then Brian Kelly at LSU is actually the most natural of those 3.
Yeah, in a weird way, I think I would agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, are we going to get is he so angry that he pounds a table after this one?
I hope so. We got 2 months worth of memes out of that.
Post-game press conferences. Yeah, that is not going well. And
they're not a good I'm surprised they're where they are. And this is LSU, it should never be that way. And we've heard about NIL and this and that. That's not a great LSU team by any stretch of the imagination. They don't have wide receivers. The defense is horrible. That's usually when they lose, it's how do they lose? They have all this talent. Now I'm just like, how do they get to this point talent wise? It's a fairly bare cupboard for LSU.
Yeah. Well, LSU at Vanderbilt, November 23rd. I really want to.
Oh, wow. That. We should do a road trip there instead of Yankee Stadium.
I think I'm already booked for that one. But yeah, that is the only thing that made this night sweeter for Notre Dame fans was what happened to Brian Kelly, and probably deserved, because if you have a live tiger at a football game, you deserve what happens to you, including something terrible happening via the tiger. But you'll have to take
dark here, Pete. Jeez, I know it's past midnight where you are, but
take a 42-13 butt whooping at home. I didn't watch that because I was covering
I didn't see really much of that game.
But it was sort of on my laptop on YouTube TV, and it seemed fairly clear that they were being lustily booed off the field at halftime. I'm not sure what the end of the game situation looked like or sounded like.
Cold as Brian. I couldn't help but notice Florida State's helmets were almost clearly devoid of their Tomahawk Pride stickers in November. Well, that would make sense if you saw them play tonight. Also, a lot of trolling from the student section tonight. We got the war chant.
The war chant going on with the Tomahawk chop, because it happened during maybe early in the fourth quarter, and I was still in the press box. And I'm like, that'd be a weird thing for Florida State to do. Like, is Notre Dame doing that? Like, I couldn't quite make it out, and it was too loud for it to be Florida State. But I wasn't quite sure. But then down on the field at the end of the game, looking around, I was like, oh yeah, this is they're doing that. And Florida State just like whatever. Like that was Florida State from start to finish. From I can't remember the defensive back's name, number 3, who made a hysterical tackle attempt on Riley Leonard's 34-yard touchdown run. They seemed like they had no interest in being here. I can't imagine. Like, what would the score been if it was like 32 degrees or colder? I mean, it's going to be like 75-0.
It's not like they scored a lot in Florida State, even with
No. I mean, it's like it would be difficult to have a performance that looked less like you wanted to actually play the game than what Florida State put out on tape tonight for everyone to watch.
So I was just thinking about that. And one the student section also seeing Mr. Brightside. I can't tell whether that's trolling Michigan or not. I think that's way too mainstream of a song for any one student section to try to claim as their own.
Yeah.
So shame on Michigan for that.
Yeah.
But whatever, they've got their own comeuppance coming their way. When you talk about the USC game and USC probably not wanting to be there, I do wonder. I mean, you threw out the scenario. What if they're losing at halftime? Well, in 2018, they're playing for a playoff spot. I believe they were losing at halftime, or at least late into that game, and it never really felt like it was in doubt. You knew Notre Dame would make the plays necessary to win that game. When have they blown them out, though, there?
They don't. So I think that game will have like real tension in the third quarter. It's just like every time Notre Dame is good when they play there. I don't like it has happened like in 1989. But
yeah, I'm saying like
modern
times.
Times. It's like Notre Dame's good. Could the game have some jeopardy at halftime in the third quarter? Yeah, for sure. I think again, as I said earlier, don't tweet in the first quarter. That might serve you well for the USC game and the Army game and maybe even Virginia, but they should be fine. Like USC knows it's going to lose. It just doesn't quite know how it's going to lose. They've lost any number of ways, and that will continue on over Thanksgiving weekend.
I'll be curious what time that game's at.
Yeah, me too. I know Jadarian Price said, I love night games. And if I had the microphone, I would have said BS. I love noon games, but
won't be noon. Won't be noon Eastern.
No, I mean, it could be 12:30. Could be 12:30 Eastern if CBS picked it up and showed it.
Yeah,
but I would think that NBC would probably grab it as the primetime game.
They've got, I believe they have Wisconsin. No, they have Iowa, Nebraska Friday, if I'm not mistaken. But I still think they could do 2. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to on a different night. But yeah, I hadn't considered that possibility, nor did I consider the possibility of Notre Dame playing Stanford in the Pac-12 Network's last ever live broadcast last year. But that's the state of affairs for West Coast football these days when you're playing Notre Dame. It hasn't been all that promising. USC did a groundbreaking on their new indoor this week. And in the press release, they said it'll be open in 26, yada, yada, yada. And they listed their opponents at home for that year, and it had Notre Dame, which was notable to me just because it was my understanding that the current contract was over after 25. I don't know if anything's been signed. So there's not going to be one last call. Hey, Notre Dame fans, last time you could see them play USC out in LA.
No. And I think Lincoln Riley's scheduling credibility or influence is probably at an all-time low. So
new AD and his president just announced they're retiring. Good for them.
Nice work, everybody, blowing up the Pac-12 on your way out the door.
Yeah, seriously.
God, sport.
Clint Novak, is this the worst Power 4 school you have ever witnessed?
Probably so. I'm trying to think of other.
Maryland 2011. I remember
Boston College game. Just 2 years ago. Was that 2 years ago when they won like 44-0? Benjamin Morrison had 3 picks in the game. That was a bad one. Brian Kelly's last game against Georgia Tech, I think it was 55-0. That was really bad. It's just like Florida State clearly has some good players, and like I think Georgia Tech had Jahmyr Gibbs. But this I mean, the level of interest in playing football from Florida State is just pathetic. You get a
Purdue week 2.
Oh my, yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Apologies to Florida State.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm like, I know there's someone we just saw.
But I mean, is Purdue a Power 4 team? Like,
they're a Big Ten team. They're more of a power team than Florida State is.
They're quite profitable. Purdue is the least serious football team that I've seen in person this year, or maybe any year. But Florida State is way up there. They're way up there. It's the second worst team that Notre Dame has played this year is Florida State.
That's saying something.
Purdue is just so bad. Oh God,
Purdue is god awful. Another fun one for you, Pete. Call us Brian. Pete, did DJ Cool move the needle and get in the stadium hyped up?
I'm old and I'm probably not down with what the kids listen to. Although I have an 11-year-old son, so he makes me listen to some things that get played in the stadium. That did not really work for me at all. The attempt at swag surfing. Also,
I thought I saw that on TV.
Yeah,
white people got to stop with this. We got to stop embarrassing ourselves.
Yeah, it didn't work at all. Yeah, it was not good. So I don't know. I think I'm getting old and crotchety because I'm like, could we get more like Notre Dame band playing? Like, do we have to have music after every change of possession? Like, can't the band play for a little bit? Because I mean, we still got the Bon Jovi greatest hits at halftime. Keeping the theme of the type of person that performs in Notre Dame Stadium being of a certain age. But yeah, that didn't work for me. I know, like, they tried. I thought the fireworks show was cool. With the rockets, red glare, and the national anthem, bombs bursting in air. Like, they shoot some stuff off. That was good. The entrance was good. Like, I think they generally do a good job. Like, I thought the Ohio State night game stuff was like pitch perfect. Tonight felt a little bit kind of like a doing too much. Like, I mean, know your audience.
In their defense, and I wasn't there. No matter what you do against Florida State, it's going to be too much.
Yeah, just
when you couldn't like flex this game off a night game the way you can in the NFL, it just deal with it.
The opponent frankly made it terrible because if they were playing number 1 Oregon and they were up 28-10 going into the fourth quarter, I would have probably said DJ Cool was like the best thing I'd ever seen. As like they should replace Go Irish Hit It Band with DJ Cool every week. But like, just with Florida State ruined it. They're just terrible. They even downgraded Notre Dame's in-game entertainment. Jim
Myman, this was the type of great house game I expected more of this season. Any idea why he and Leonard haven't clicked like this until tonight?
I mean, I don't know if Leonard really has clicked with a lot of people a lot among the receivers. Bo Collins has had a moment. Faison's had a moment. Tonight was Great House's moment. His offense is not built to like whip the ball around to the wide receivers. We're 9 games into the season. There has not been a 100-yard receiver. I think there's been 3 total under Marcus Freeman, and 2 of them were in his first game. So yeah, I just don't think the offense is not in a great spot when it comes to utilizing the wide receivers. But when you're getting 27 combined carries among Jadarian Price, Riley Leonard, and Jeremiyah Love, essentially through 3 quarters, you roll with that. It's like the 28-yard pass to Aeneas Williams. It's great. Like, do that. That's the throw Riley Leonard could make. But yeah, but I'm with Jim in the sense of like, I thought Greathouse was going to be the best receiver on the team, maybe by a decent margin, and that has not happened. And I'm not sure I have an awesome explanation for why. I
thought he'd be what Bo Collins has been for the most part for them, as far as like the main target. But and he was tonight. But it felt saying his name as much as we did tonight was like the light bulb clicking of, oh yeah, and in camp, we heard so much about this guy, and we haven't seen it on the field just yet. Andre King, Mr. Matt, what's up? It's Asaf's dad. Andre, what's up? That's cousin of Asaf Schwab, late Notre Dame fullback from the Charlie Weiss era. Wrote a story about him after he passed away. And awesome avatar. I believe those are the Sean Kemp Reeboks. Also a local shout out, right? Elkhart, Indiana, Sean Kemp.
That's right. Yes. Definitely local. I can't remember if it was Elkhart or not, but yeah, he's
for sure
from the area.
Andre, great to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in as always. We got a couple people saying we're getting way too ahead of ourselves here. Daniel Massoud, I don't see how they lose another game. Fortuna, that's a dangerous thing to say. Followed by Brendan McCarthy, excuse me. Pete is getting cocky, fellas. Cocky Pete is the best Pete. We don't call the plays or make the plays. We just look at the point spreads and say, if you're favored by, say, 28.5 points over a team, you should probably beat them. And in the case of Virginia, Army, and USC, they should beat them. They're not, even teams that get better throughout the course of the season lay eggs. And not necessarily in the form of losses, but they don't play well. Like Indiana today, for example, as dominant as they had. Like Indiana, for example, did not play great today. They dropped 2 late passes that could have ended that game a lot earlier.
Ohio State against Nebraska.
Right. Do we think Notre Dame just got Florida out of their system early on, or what?
Yeah, I don't. That's a good. Well, I just don't think they were. I don't think they were laying eggs in September. I just don't think they were good.
Same, but I just now that they seem to have hit a stride, I just at some point a bounce is not going to go your way.
Yeah,
a crazy play is going to happen. Someone's not going to
Notre Dame. Don't you watch them and think they're not going back to that?
Because I don't. Yes, but I don't know. Really good teams play bad football every week, even in wins.
And look, if they play bad football, next week they'll be fine.
I think they'll be fine no matter what. Army's a weird game because it's just so different.
And I feel like if they played like a C- game at USC, they could lose. I just don't.
If USC shows up, yes, absolutely.
I just think Notre Dame is done with playing C- football, and it's like, I think once you see the end of the line, it's there. It's not like something that's over the horizon. That's it's a bit abstract. It's there. The playoff rankings are out. What's on the line. There's so much to play for. And I've written about this. We've talked about this. They keep bringing up Northern Illinois. I don't think it came up in the postgame presser tonight, but
it did in the broadcast.
Okay. I mean, Marcus Freeman keeps bringing it up. And as long as he keeps bringing it up and the players keep listening, then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Northern Illinois is not going to happen again because they keep bringing up Northern Illinois, because that's the only way that kind of game can happen.
I would think so.
Just prepare like garbage during the week.
And they're not going to have the emotional letdown of a big win because there are no big wins remaining. As far as
yeah, I mean, USC will be a big win, but then you got a month to figure it out. So
what, I haven't looked at the schedule that week. Is there any chance that game day goes to Yankee Stadium?
Ooh, a little kind of a 4 horseman thing.
It is by definition a playoff elimination game. We could laugh at that all we want, but the winner's going to be in and the loser's going to be out. What is that week? Indiana at Ohio State.
Yeah, okay. Then you're going to Ohio State for that one.
Another one I would have laughed at if you told me that.
Yeah, exactly.
Beginning of the year. Vanderbilt LSU that week. He's mentioned. Oh, that game's at LSU. It's not at Nashville. So LSU may actually have a chance in that one. All right. No, I imagine it will be. It
will be a top 10 game. Yeah, in Columbus.
Interesting. Clint Novak, I agree with this one. ND defense prevents team from laying a total leg. I just don't see teams scoring on them. I mean,
No.
3 points tonight. I mean, we take them for granted because we've just come to expect it. I mean, Navy technically put up 14, Georgia Tech 13, Stanford. I mean, it's just since that Louisville game in particular, it's just been a brick wall. And that's another unit that, despite all the injuries they've had to deal with, has gotten better. And that secondary play has just still been absolutely phenomenal, even without Benjamin Morrison. And that, to me, is the biggest sign as far as where the program is right now. When you see those young guys this deep into a season with those kind of responsibilities still making big plays.
Yeah. I mean, you know how many 200-yard passing performances Notre Dame's defense has allowed this year?
0?
2.
No, Shuck definitely did it.
Shuck, and then Zach Pyron did it with the help of like a drive at the end to get him over the hump. Like, I mean, they've given up 3 in the last 4 games. They've allowed less than 100 yards 3 times. Like, I get one of them is Navy, but I mean, come on, they're sitting here at 6 touchdowns allowed, 12 picks. It is, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like, and when you watch the games from the press box, I enjoy sort of watching like the receivers go out, how are they covered, what's open, like what was the throw the quarterback should have made when he is getting blown up by Riley Mills. Nobody's open. Like maybe there's a check down for 5 yards on 3rd and 12, but like nobody is open. And that, like, they're incredibly well coached defense, and that's not changing between now and the end of the USC game.
Dingham's points out, note on the defense, ND is one of 2 teams that has allowed more than 24 points a game this year. Tennessee is the other. Yeah, and I don't know who's USC's not going to do it unless Jaden Maeva turns out to be the second coming of Carson Palmer and Matt Leinart. I mean,
Virginia's not doing it.
No. Leinart's kid committed to SMU this week. That's the, like, you were saying you feel old. I feel old now. Matt Leinart's kid is committed to college.
I watched Plaxico Burris's kid play last week.
Yeah, but Burris is older than like Leinart's like still like fresh, I think, for Notre Dame fans. Like that's like, oh.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good
point. This is a valid question, I think, from Mark 1. Concerned about a kicker, we might need 3 points to win in a playoff. Yeah. Make it that far, which is good. I mean, the situational stuff is, I don't want to say it's always going to be a concern, but I do think there's something to be said for having to like grind out wins, and they haven't really had to do that. The Louisville game a little bit, but
and like getting Jeter back, well, it definitely matters for the postseason,
right?
It matters for USC too. Like, and I thought it was mildly significant that he came back and kicked later in the game, because I thought when he missed that field goal, like it looked awkward. Like maybe I retweaked the injury that I had already was nursing in the groin. So the fact that wasn't the case, I thought was good. But yeah, it was not a good field goal attempt when he made it or missed it.
Brendan McCarthy, I'm calling it here. Clemson will win the ACC and get a top 4 bid. They might be out of it. They might lose that tiebreaker, right?
Yeah, that was I was on the impression that Clemson controlled the path to making the ACC championship game. They don't. So that still is highly likely going to be SMU and Miami. If Clemson makes it, that was kind of what I was interested in. Is like if Clemson made it and they beat SMU, what happens to Miami at 11-1? I think Miami might be SOL at 11-1.
I would agree
if they did not make the conference championship game, but that is highly, highly unlikely to happen. Like I think it's an impossibility, frankly. So Miami will get a shot against SMU, or probably SMU, in the conference championship game.
Miami's strength of schedule is actually 54, 10 spots ahead of Notre Dame, according to Sacred. I would not have guessed that. Again, I think the group of 5 is what really drags down Notre Dame in that regard. I also think SMU is better than Miami. And that would be a fun ACC title game. 80s nostalgia. Rhett Lashley was the OC at Miami. His quarterback's coach is De'Ara King, who was the quarterback at Miami. And Lashley, when he took over SMU, basically said, like, if Miami why can't we be like the Miami of Dallas? Like, why can't we like just put a fence around the Metroplex and
what does he mean by that? Why can't we go 7-5?
Well, if you can buy your way into a power conference and then kick everyone's ass your first year there,
it's not bad.
Yeah, you could do good things. You know who might get a first round bye, and this one was so far off my radar forever, and it would turn out to be like I wouldn't say the greatest story in college football history, but the biggest.
Ooh.
Colorado.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know that. The fact that Colorado could go from like the most over-publicized team to like, wait a minute, Colorado's good, would be a hell of a story.
So I think we're very close to the sun here, but I think most rational people would agree the most shocking, non-indicative result of the college football season was Northern Illinois over Notre Dame, just given how both teams have been. Right behind that, in my opinion, is the same game that was that same day, Nebraska killing Colorado. Because after that, I thought Nebraska's back and Colorado's going to have a hard time getting bowl eligible. And they're really good. Like, if he stays healthy, Hunter should win the Heisman. And what he's doing is just phenomenal. Shedeur signed a tortilla today. I don't know if you saw that. That got thrown at him.
No, these are the things you miss out when you're watching DJ Cool in the end zone.
You know, I was a little bummed out to be missing a primetime game at Notre Dame Stadium, but hearing you describe it in all of its glory tonight, I got to say.
It was just like high production value, but low production value of the actual football being played by Florida State. So they ruined it for everybody.
And they're still trying to sue the ACC to get out.
Hot mess.
That's all from me. We'll be back next week. We've got our guests lined up. Eric McLean of the ACC Network. For once, we will not be talking to him after a Notre Dame Clemson game. But it is in the middle of Notre Dame's ACC stretch, and no one knows that league better than Eric. He's a great guy to talk to. You guys know him. We know him. He's always fun to chat with. So don't know if he'll make as much money into this lifetime as our last guest did, but that's okay. We can chop it up with the best of him. And he's a bald, so he fits in better with us anyway.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I met up with Tom Mendoza podcast guests on Friday night and some of his friends at a local watering hole. Podcast got a lot of good feedback. So, yeah, apparently Tom sent it around to his friends or their regular listeners anyway. So either way, we appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks to all of you guys for listening. Thanks for submitting questions. Please keep it up. We will be back at it Wednesday as we preview Notre Dame's game against Virginia. That's all from Pete and me, Matt. 52-3 was the final, I think.
Yeah, that was the score of this game. Was 52.
Yeah. I almost
42-13 was the other one.
I predicted 38-7. It was 38-3 for a while there, so I was thinking I might have nailed that part, but it would have been under. So Notre Dame beats Florida State. Florida State still has a football season to play, 2 more games. God bless them. They might actually win the last 2, though. They play an FCS team and they play Florida, who's not much better than they are right now. So there's some drama, some state pride. But that's all I got. That's Pete. I'm Matt. Thanks as always for joining us on The Independent.